My union contract was a weapon, a beautifully crafted blade of bureaucracy and workers' rights, and I, lucky, was about to unsheath it to dismantle a multi-store theft ring so brazen it was being run from the office of my own area manager. It all started not with a bang, but with a single misplaced pickle in the sweaty, twitchy face of a man who was in way over his head. You see, I was still the uncrowned king of my particular Burger King domain. Karen, the area manager whose soul was the color of day-old grease, was back from her suspension after the whole bomb incident fiasco. The corporate overlords had decided that empathy courses were the solution, but they just taught her to be a more sophisticated monster. The air in the restaurant was now permanently thick with a tension you could chew on. She'd learned the hard way that she couldn't fire me. My health and safety badge and that beautiful union contract saw to that. But she graduated with honors in the art of the subtle, bureaucratic knife. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts. She'd scheduled me for brutal clopins, closing the store at 1 a.m. after a hectic Friday night, and then being expected to open bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at 6 a.m. on Saturday. When I dared look tired, she'd send a scathing email to everyone, lamenting the lack of professional standards. She'd lose my meticulously filled-out overtime sheets, not once, but twice, forcing me to hunt down witnesses and resubmit them, each time with a smug, "Are you sure these hours are correct?" from payroll, who she clearly primed. She moved my locker to the one right next to the smelly mop sink. Petty, pathetic, but constant. But I had my fortress, my allies. Annie, a manager from a store 2 towns over, was a saint who ran her shop with efficiency and compassion, and we'd often trade intelligence over phone. Paco, before he'd escaped to a better life, had been a brother in arms. And then there was Kevin, Karen's sniveling, sycophantic minion. He was less a person and more a sentient stress ball, designed to absorb Karen's rage and occasionally parrot her commands. Lately, however, something was off with Kevin. The usual smug obedience was gone, replaced by a jittery, wide-eyed anxiety. He'd jump when a fryer timer went off. He'd stammer over simple instructions. He looked, to put it plainly, like a man who was waiting for a trapdoor to open beneath his feet. The first real crack in their operation appeared on a dreary Tuesday afternoon. We were in the midst of a routine end-of-month stock check. I was in the walk-in freezer, my breath pluming in the Arctic air, counting boxes of 100% British beef patties. The silence was broken by the squeak of the door. Kevin shuffled in, clipboard clutched in his white-knuckled grip. "Lucky," he began, his voice a reedy tremor. Just need you to sign this. Quick thing. Stock discrepancy form." I took the clipboard, the cold metal seeping into my fingers. It wasn't a stock discrepancy form. It was a waste disposal form. Specifically, it stated we had identified and destroyed 50 entire boxes of frozen fries due to a freezer malfunction and temperature drop. "Kevin," I said, my voice flat and calm, cutting through the frosty air. "The freezer diagnostics have been green for 6 months. The temperature log is perfect. I check it myself every 4 hours. There was no malfunction. And we most certainly did not throw away 50 boxes of fries. Do you have any idea the volume that is? We'd have had to close the store for a full day just to haul it to the industrial bins. It would have been an event. So I'll ask you once, what is this?" His face, already pale, took on a ghostly translucence. A bead of sweat traced a path down his temple, despite the sub-zero temperature. "It's just a form, Lucky. Karen said to fill it out. It's for corporate accounting. Just sign it and it's done." "I don't sign lies, Kevin," I said, my tone dropping to a low, dangerous register, "especially not lies that involve thousands of pounds of inventory. That's not a paperwork error. That's theft. Now, why does Karen want me to put my name on a document that facilitates theft?" He snatched the clipboard back as if it had burned him, the paper rustling violently. "Forget it. I'll just tell her I couldn't find you. I'll authorize it myself. It's fine. It's all fine." He didn't meet my eyes, spinning on his heel and practically falling out a freezer door in his haste to escape. That was the moment. That wasn't petty tyranny. That was fear. Pure, unadulterated fear. This was something bigger, and it was financial. The war had just escalated from a border skirmish to a full-scale intelligence operation. I became a ghost, a silent observer in my own kitchen. I started paying attention to everything. I casually chat with Barry, our regular delivery driver from the main supplier, a bloke with a gut that testified to his love of fried food and a heart of gold. "Barry," I'd say, hand him a coffee, "you been to the King's Cross store lately? Heard they had a right mess with delivery." Barry would slurp his coffee. "Nah, mate. Quiet as a mouse. That one. Though their orders have been a bit light lately. Funny that. Same with the one up on Elm Street. Barely enough to keep him going, according to their waste logs. Strange business. Waste logs. There was again. I'd accidentally be near the office printer when invoices were printing. I'd see the digital trail, and a clear, damning pattern emerged. The stores under Karen's direct control, the ones run by her loyalists, were all logging massive, physically improbable amount of waste. Fries, burgers, buns, nuggets, soda syrup. You name it, they were apparently throwing away by the pallet load every week. I called Annie that evening, the phone pressed tight to my ear. "Annie, I need you to be straight with me. No sugarcoating. Is your store suddenly suffering from a plague of faulty equipment? Massive, recurring food spoilage?" She let out a bitter, hollow laugh. "Lucky, you know me. I run a tight ship. My waste is minimal. But the paperwork Karen and Kevin have been forcing down our throats, it's insane. Last week, I had to sign off on 30 cases of soda syrup being damaged in transit. The driver and I checked every single box. They were pristine. Not a dent. But Kevin was standing right there, clipboard in hand, face all sweaty, telling me it was a new corporate accounting requirement, and my bonus depended on compliance. I felt like I had no choice. I'm sorry, Lucky. The pieces weren't just clicking into place. They were slamming together like prison cell doors. Karen was orchestrating a massive coordinated fraud. She was having the full product delivered, then falsifying documents to claim a huge portion of it was destroyed, and instead, she was siphoning it off to be sold on the black market. It was brazen. It was arrogant. And she was using her position and her loyalist managers to force the paperwork through. My store and a few other stubborn ones like Annie's were the last holes in her scheme. That's why Kevin was so desperate for my signature. He needed to close the loop and make the phantom losses in my store look legitimate. I knew I couldn't go to Dave yet. Not directly. Dave was a man who lived and breathed paperwork. And right now, all the official paperwork was being meticulously fabricated by Karen herself. I needed proof. Hard, physical, undeniable proof that even the most bureaucratic mind couldn't explain away. My golden opportunity came a week later, during a late shift. The dinner rush had faded into a quiet lull. I was in the office, cashing up the tills. The office computer, which was linked to the central ordering and logistics system for all 21 stores in the region, was still logged in. Karen had been using it earlier to run reports. I noticed she left a browser tab open. It wasn't our internal system. It was a login portal for a company called Bargain Bites Wholesale. The name sent a jolt through me. It wasn't one of our approved suppliers. It wasn't even a food service company I'd ever heard of. Trying to keep my breathing steady, I clicked into the order history. My eyes widened. The screen filled with lines of data. Delivery orders twice a week, like clockwork, for the last 6 months. The quantities were staggering. 200 boxes of frozen fries, 100 boxes of beef patties, 50 cases of chicken nuggets. It was a mirror image of the waste being reported. The delivery address wasn't any of our Burger King locations. It was a warehouse unit on a dingy industrial estate on the far outskirts of town. Just then, I heard the distinct sound of key fumbling in the front door lock. My heart leapt into my throat. It was Kevin. He was back. I quickly closed the browser tab and frantically grabbed a stack of receipts, pretending to be cross-referencing them with the cash roll. "Lucky, you're still here," Kevin said, his voice unnaturally high. His eyes immediately darted towards a computer screen, then back to me, suspicious and fearful. "Just finishing the cash up. You forget something?" Yeah. My phone charger." He was a terrible liar. He never charged his phone at work. He brushed past me and went straight to Karen's designated desk drawer. He didn't rummage. He knew exactly where it was. He pulled out a small black full-letter ledger, the kind you buy in a cheap stationery shop. He clutched it to his chest as if it were the Holy Grail. "Right. See you tomorrow," he mumbled, not making eye contact, and practically sprinted out of the office, his footsteps echoing in the empty restaurant. That ledger, that was it. The digital trail on Bargain Bites was one thing, but that physical book, that had to be the master record, the Rosetta Stone that connected the fake waste reports in our system to the illicit sales and the money. It was the proof I needed. The next morning, I put my plan into motion. I called Dave from my mobile, standing out back by the bins for privacy. "Dave, it's Lucky." I heard a long, weary sigh on the other end. "What you done now, Lucky? Do I need to pour a drink before you start?" "Maybe," I said, injecting a tone of grave concern into my voice. "But it's not about her directly. Not this time. It's about Kevin. I think he's embezzling. On a massive scale." There was a stunned silence. "Kevin," Dave finally spluttered. "That spineless, that human echo? Explain. Now." "I think he's running a side business." I laid it out, carefully framing the narrative. "I've seen him with a private ledger. He's been strong-arming managers into signing false waste disposal forms. I refused, but others, well, they weren't as stubborn as me. I think he's creating phantom inventory loss and pocketing the cash from selling it on. The numbers are huge, Dave. We're talking tens of thousands of pounds. Maybe a lot more." I carefully presented the evidence I'd gathered, the inconsistent waste forms, the comments from Barry the driver, the strange logistics portal I'd stumbled upon while looking for a training manual. I painted a picture of Kevin as a surprisingly cunning fox in the henhouse, acting alone. I knew if I pointed the finger directly at Karen from the start, Dave might dismiss it as another chapter in our long-running feud. But Kevin was expendable, and investigating Kevin would inevitably and explosively lead the trail right back to his master. Dave was silent for so long, I thought the call had dropped. When he spoke again, his voice had lost all its bureaucratic softness. It was cold, hard, and sharp as a blade. "All right, listen to me very carefully. I'm coming down. Tomorrow, I'll be there unannounced for the 2 p.m. delivery. You will not say a word to anyone. Not a whisper. Not to your favorite grill cook. Not to Annie. No one. Is that understood?" "Understood," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. The trap was set. The following day, the restaurant was a cacophony of lunchtime chaos. The hiss of the grill, the beeping of timers, the chatter of customers. It was all a symphony of normalcy, but I was a coiled spring inside. I directed traffic, solved problems, and smiled at customers, all while my senses were on high alert. At 1:55 p.m., right on cue, Dave walked in. He was dressed in a plain, dark gray suit, his face an unreadable mask of corporate neutrality. He gave me the faintest of nods and took a seat in a corner booth, pulling out his phone and becoming just another businessman taking a lunch break. At 2 p.m. precisely, not our usual supply truck, but a slightly battered white van with Bargain Bites Wholesale stenciled crudely on the side pulled up to our rear delivery door. My pulse quickened. This was a pickup. Kevin emerged from the office, his face a slick mask of nervous sweat. He barely glanced at me, directing the burly driver to start loading from our dry store. They began hauling out pallets that were covered with grimy tarps. But they were careless. A corner of one tarp flipped back. I saw it clearly. The distinctive blue and white packaging of our brand-name frozen fries. This wasn't empty packaging or waste. This was saleable, high-value product. Karen wasn't just falsifying paperwork. She was using my store, the one she professed to hate, the one with employees she couldn't control, as a central staging ground for a criminal operation. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. She was hiding in plain sight, using our high volume of legitimate deliveries as camouflage. As the driver heaved the last pallet toward the van, Kevin, thinking he was unobserved, pulled the black ledger from his inside jacket pocket. He licked his thumb and began checking off items, muttering to himself. That's when Dave moved. He stood up from his booth, his movement calm and deliberate, and walked with a quiet authority towards a back door. The kitchen noise seemed to hush in his wake. "Kevin," Dave said, his voice not loud, but it cut through the air like a knife. Every member of staff within earshot froze. "What, exactly, is being loaded onto that truck? It's not one of our approved carriers." Kevin froze mid-check mark. The ledger slipped from his trembling fingers, hitting the floor with a thud and splaying open. The pages were a mess of handwritten numbers, dates, product codes, and most damning of all, next to every major entry, a neat looping KR. It's approved waste transfer," Kevin stammered, his voice a squeak. "To a recycling plant. To Bargain Bites Wholesale Recycling, is it?" Dave asked with icy sarcasm as he bent down and picked up the ledger. His eyes scanned the pages, and I watched as his expression transformed from stern curiosity to thunderous rage. "This isn't waste, Kevin. This is inventory. Hundreds of cases, thousands of pounds worth. And these initials, K.R. That wouldn't be Karen, would it?" As if summoned by the utterance of her name, the front door burst open and Karen stormed in, her face set in its usual permanent scowl. "What is the meaning of this? Why is the delivery bay blocked?" "Lucky. I told you to ensure." Her tirade died in her throat. Her eyes locked onto Dave, then the open ledger in his hands, then the half-loaded van, and finally onto me, standing there with my arms crossed. The color drained from her face, so completely it was as if someone had pulled a plug. The mask of the tyrannical boss shattered, revealing the terrified, cornered woman beneath. "Karen," Dave said, holding the ledger up like a prosecutor presenting Exhibit A, "care to explain why you and Kevin appear to be running a black market food operation out of my stores? And why you've been systematically falsifying corporate documents to the tune of, by my initial estimate here, over 200,000 pounds. Karen's mouth worked soundlessly. She looked from Dave's furious face to my calm, triumphant one, and her eyes filled with a pure, undiluted hatred I'd never seen before. It was venomous. "You!" she finally snarled, spitting the word at me. "You meddling little worm. You did this." I met her gaze without flinching, allowing my smile to finally break through. "I just enforced the rules, Karen. You should have read the employee handbook more closely. The section on fraud and gross misconduct is particularly enlightening. It has a lot in common with the criminal code." It was a beautiful, cascading waterfall of justice. Dave already had his phone out, calling the police. Karen and Kevin were read their rights right there in the kitchen, next to the bubbling fryers. Kevin immediately started crying, begging and offering to tell them everything. Karen remained silent, her face a stony mask of defiance, even as the cuffs clicked shut around her wrists. The subsequent investigation was deep and thorough. It uncovered the whole sordid scheme. Karen had built a sophisticated network, involving several of her most loyal minion managers who were taking generous cuts for their silence and compliance. They all went down with her. Bargain Bites Wholesale was a front run by a cousin of hers, and was shut down immediately. The fallout was seismic. Dave, to his credit, didn't just sweep it under the rug. He launched a full regional audit. He promoted Annie to area manager on the spot, tasking her with cleaning up the shattered territory and restoring morale. His first official act in his new, more vigilant role was to call me into the office, my office, a week later. "Lucky," he began, leaning back in the chair, "I owe you a debt. That woman was systematically robbing us blind and corrupting everything she touched. I'm offering you Karen's old job, the area manager position. It's yours." I looked him dead in the eye, the same way I had looked at Karen 100 times. "Dave," I said with all the sincerity I could muster, "with all due respect, you couldn't afford me. And I don't want her job. I don't want her power. I don't want her stress. I just wanted her gone. Mission accomplished." He stared at me for a second, then threw his head back and laughed. A genuine, hearty, from the gut laugh I never knew the man was capable of. "Fair enough, Lucky. Fair enough. You're a one-of-a-kind pain in the arse, and this company is lucky to have you. So, name your price. What will it take to keep you here and happy?" I thought about it for a moment. The sound of my restaurant, my real kingdom, buzzing happily outside the door. A permanent, significant pay rise. A guaranteed 40-hour week with no more clopins, ever. And I paused for dramatic effect. The official corporate title of Regional Health and Safety Officer. I answered directly to you. I have the authority to visit any store in the region, unannounced, and my word on health, safety, and ethical policy is final. No arguments. Dave didn't even hesitate. He extended his hand across the desk. "Deal. Welcome to corporate security, you magnificent bastard." So, I never became a manager. I became something far, far better. I became the specter that haunted every lazy, corrupt, or incompetent manager in the region, the ghost of health and safety future. I was a legend, a myth they told new managers to scare them into checking their temperature logs. Kara was convicted of fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering and got 18 months in prison. Kevin, being the pathetic, sniveling follower he was, turned state's evidence and got a suspended sentence, vanishing into obscurity. And me? I still work for Burger King. I ride my motorcycle from store to store, my official health and safety badge now gleaming on a lanyard over my leather jacket. I walk in, and managers who I've never met before suddenly stand up straighter, their eyes darting to check their shoes, their hairnets, the date on the mayonnaise, because they've heard the stories. They know Lucky is watching, and they know that Lucky doesn't just care about pickles on the floor or the angle of a fire exit. He cares about justice. And he's still got that union contract, now slightly dog-eared, ready as the perfect weapon for the next tyrant foolish enough to test him.